Developing your communication skills is essential for the success of your career in hospitality, whether in hotels, restaurants, or in tourism. It's unlikely you'll become a good leader if you can't communicate well, regardless if you're leading a small team or a large organization. Hello everyone, my name is Victor Costa and I'm a hospitality management professor with more than 20 years of experience in this field. And one of the essential points that I strive to develop with my students is their ability to communicate effectively. I teach many international students and English is not their native language. And in fact, it's not even my native language, but I've learned to communicate well despite the language barriers. Many students struggle to communicate because they focus too much in the verbal aspect of communication. And perhaps this isn't your case, but even when you're trying to communicate in your native language, maybe you're not achieving the expected results in that job interview or with your team, or even when you're trying to sell something or propose a new idea for your workplace. So I want to give you a tip that can help you a lot. Have you ever heard about the 3 V's of communication? A long time ago, a professor at Stanford University determined that effective personal communication is composed of 3 elements. The first element is verbal. It's what you say, the words you use. The second element is your voice, the tone, the rhythm, the volume of your voice. And the third element is the visual element, which includes your body language. Which of these 3 elements do you think is the most important? Usually, when I ask this question to my students, they all point to the verbal element, the words you use. But in reality, that is the least impactful element in your communication. Did you know that? That's right. What you say is not necessarily the most important thing. Of course, effective communication depends on the proper use of those 3 elements. However, the visual, your body language, is the most impactful aspect. The Stanford professor determined that the visual element is responsible for 55% of the effectiveness of our communication. The vocal element accounts for 38%, and the verbal impacts only 7%. So what does that mean in practice? It's not only a matter of determining the importance of each one of those elements, but to understand how they impact the effectiveness of our communication. The words you use are still important. However, the other 2 elements, the vocal and the visual, they can contradict your words or even ruin your communication. Let me try to give you an example. When I worked with Emirates Airlines, we had a standardized communication to demonstrate professionalism and hospitality with our guests. Every time a guest would say thank you, our standard response should be, "It's a pleasure." However, what made that phrase unique were not necessarily the words we were using. If I said, "It's a pleasure," but without the proper intonation and without the visual elements that would reinforce that phrase, the communication would probably sound too mechanical and impersonal, creating a negative effect instead of the positive experience that I intended. So how can we put the 3 V's of communication in practice? First, we need to choose the appropriate words. Consider the environment and your audience. Often, you'll be talking to your guests. Is this jargon or a specific expression that I'm using known to my listener? Effective communication does not depend on the amount of knowledge that you have, but rather on your listener's level of understanding of what you're saying. So let's take a sommelier as an example, that wine expert professional. If you're a sommelier, there's no point in using very specific and technical terms with your guest if they don't have that level of knowledge about wines. So always consider your audience before you choose your words. But again, as we saw before, words are only responsible for 7% of your communication. So let's consider the other 2 elements. The second V of effective communication was vocal. This refers to the tone, the rhythm, the volume of your speech. A clear and confident voice inspires and motivates people. So focus on speaking clearly, maintaining an appropriate volume, and using an intentional rhythm. Think about the power of melody here. If I ask you to recite the chapter of your favorite book, or let's make it easier, just a page of your favorite book, or a paragraph, I bet you will struggle to remember word by word. But if I ask you about your favorite song, you probably know all the lyrics by heart. Why do you think is that? That's the power of melody. Therefore, consider how the tone and melody of your voice is impacting the quality of your communication. Remember the phrase, "It's my pleasure"? Imagine saying that phrase without enthusiasm, without feeling or emotion. Will your guests believe that it was a pleasure to serve them? I don't think so. Another important aspect of the vocal element is rhythm. And here I want to draw your attention to the power of a good pause. And a well-paced pause helps you to emphasize what you want to communicate. And finally, let's explore the visual element, body language. Your gestures and expressions can reinforce or contradict your message. Again, I'll try to give you an example. Remember that time you received a gift that you didn't really like? You probably tried to be polite and to show that you were grateful. You carefully chose your words, you were trying to hide your emotions and control the intonation of your voice. However, it was in your face. You couldn't hide it, and your friend recognized that you didn't like the gift. Even though you said thank you, I loved it, your friend could tell from your facial expressions that you were frustrated and disappointed with that gift. And that's usually when our friends will say, "Oh, by the way, here's the exchange receipt if you need to change the size or the color." And then you start developing the same fame that Rachel from the Friends series developed. Remember, I'll try to put a little piece here for you to watch and have fun.
Hey, by any chance, did either of you pick Rachel for your Secret Santa? Because I want to trade for her.
I picked her. Oh, thank God you want her. Oh,
Wow, why do you want to get rid of her so badly?
because she exchanges every gift she ever gets. It's like impossible to get her something she likes. Come on, let's trade.
Well, that's not true. That's not true. I got her that backpack and she loved it. I remember how much she was crying the day that big dog ran off with... Well, there was no big dog.
This is from... Well, thank you, Melanie.
Okay, this one right here is from me.
Okay. It's light. It rattles. It's... Travel Scrabble. Oh, thank you. This one's from Joey. Feels like a book. Think it's a book. Feels like a book. And it's a book.
Oh, it's Dr. Seuss.
That book got me through some tough times.
There is a little child inside this man.
Yes, the doctors say if they remove it, he'll die.
Oh, I love it.
Really? You're not going to return it?
Well, not the second.
Now careful, because the same thing could happen to your guests. So your expressions, your gestures, your eye contact, your body language are essential to establishing an effective communication. Therefore, pay attention with your gestures and be intentional with your posture and with your facial expressions. Developing these 3 V's can help you communicate more effectively with your internal and external guests, improving your interactions and results as a leader. Did you already know the concept of the 3 V's of communication? Which one is the most challenging for you? Please comment here and let us know what you do to develop your communication skills. If you found this helpful, like it and share with your friends, and subscribe here for more tips that will help you develop your career in hospitality. Until next time, keep practicing true hospitality.